Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, July 22nd, July 23rd, 2015. Robert, 18, and Michael, 16, Bever, would often talk. They would often fantasize and think about ways of how they could kill their abusive parents and get away with it. Both brothers said that their parents was extremely hateful and very physically and verbally abusive. Their parents would often talk about how they hated the world, and they would refer to everything in biblical apocalypse, a retribution for everything that they hated. Robert and Michael, and even one of the other siblings, would say how the father would physically, verbally, and emotionally abuse them. The father would even say he could kill them. And in the same breath, he would talk about how complete strangers in the world were evil and ready to kill them, though they were being abused daily just for fun by their father. And their mother, she would either shadow the abuse or just let it happen. It would be months before the Bever family would even leave the home to go grocery shopping in town. The kids didn't even have the luxury of going to school to get away from their parents. They were homeschooled, so they were in the house consistently every day. They couldn't even leave to talk to the neighborhood kids. They couldn't even walk by the windows. The parents would tell them they didn't want anyone to know that anyone was even in the home. Robert, he was so tired of being kicked and punched by his father, he started to wear body armor in front of his parents. He said, quote, "This is my life preservation rig," unquote. He wore it every day. He even added, quote, "Every time I put my armor on, I feel empowered," unquote. The brothers discussed at this point not only killing their parents, but their siblings as well. They wanted a body count up to 500 people. They discussed murdering strangers to add to the body count. They were obsessed with the boys that were involved in the Columbine massacre. They thought about a shooting spree, but they would settle on knives. It would be quieter. The brothers were also very obsessed with serial killers. They thought about becoming infamous. It was something that thinking was about to change into a reality. The brothers would arm themselves with a knife and a small hatchet. They pretended to want to show their 13-year-old little sister, Crystal, something on the computer. When she entered the room, both brothers began to stab her simultaneously. They admitted it wasn't like the movies when one stab and the person was dead. They had to keep stabbing her. And Crystal, she was fighting back. She was fighting for her life. The mother, 44-year-old April, she heard the commotion from downstairs and she began to come upstairs to see what her boys were up to now. When she got up the stairs, both of the brothers again started another simultaneous slaying, and they would kill their mother. It had begun. It was no stopping. It was no turning back now. They would head for the patriarch of the family, who was downstairs. He was first hit in his head with blunt force object to subdue him, and then he was stabbed repeatedly. Christopher, he was an easy kill, their younger little brother. They would stab him 6 times, and Christopher, he was gone forever. Now, Victoria, she took a little bit longer to kill, but both of the brothers again would stab Victoria simultaneously as well. Daniel not only heard the commotion, but he saw the blood, and he went running back to a room, and he locked himself in from what he just saw. In the room, he called 911 and spoke to the 911 operator and told her that the brothers had started to kill family members. Michael began banging on the door as a ruse. He was telling Daniel to open up, that Robert was coming after him, that Robert was trying to kill him. So Daniel, like any other caring younger brother, he was foiled by this evil plot, and he opened up the door to what would be opening up the door to his murder. They would simultaneously, once again, working as a pair, stab Daniel to death. The one thing that Daniel did manage to do before his death was he did call 911 successfully, and cars were en route to the home. When the brothers would hear the sirens, they began to run off. Quickly, they captured Michael, the younger of the two. They actually had pictures they took at the scene of Michael with blood all over his white t-shirt, blood smears on his face. He was armed. He looked almost ghost-like, but they captured him. It wasn't long before, with canines in the area, that they would capture Robert. So both brothers was taken in. When the police would assess the crime scene, it was unbelievable. The bodies that was butchered in the home by these brothers. There was even a small baby named Autumn who was left in her bed sleeping. Why wasn't she murdered like all the rest? Well, the brothers simply forgot. During the police interview or interrogation, Michael, he didn't want to talk about what had just happened. Although they did mention that the crimes had been recorded. The brothers had recorded these crimes on 2 flash drives. One was actually for the police, and the other one they wanted for the internet. Yes, they wanted everybody in the world to see what they have done. Michael's jailhouse journals would show childlike drawings of murder and death. It seems like he had an obsession with it. Robert, on the other hand, was trying to kill himself in a failed suicide attempt. Were these brothers even showing remorse in different ways? Who would know? Who would know? Because 2 years later, Robert, he armed himself with a jail-made 8-inch shank, and he tried to attack the prison staff. So both these brothers was handling being incarcerated very differently. The neighbors were speechless. They knew the family stayed there. They didn't know how many. They didn't even know the names of the family members until it had came out in the newspaper. David, 52, he had been stabbed at least 28 times. The mother, April, 44, she was killed with the blunt force trauma at first, as well as her husband. She had 48 wounds to her head, her neck, her arms, her hands, her torso. Daniel, 12, the one that would make the 911 telephone call, he had 21 stab wounds to his head, neck, torso, arms, and hands. Victoria, she was only 5. She had 23 stab wounds, both to the sides of her neck, her chest, her back, and her upper arms. Crystal, 13, the first kill, the one that they had tricked her into coming into the bedroom to see something on the computer, she had stab wounds to her stomach, her arms. They had even slit her throat because she was screaming. But Crystal, she would survive. And Autumn, the 2-year-old, she was sleeping in her room, so she didn't even know that her family was being massacred while she slept. Michael even said her birthday was coming up during their massacre, and he made sure he held her that night before that he and his brother agreed to decapitate her. But the only reason why this baby girl wasn't decapitated was simply because they forgot. During court, Robert Bever, he was now sporting tattoos on each hand and letters on his fingers. On one of his hands were the letters LWOP times 5. On the other hand, the letters on his fingers spelled LIFE, life, which would be interesting because Robert would get life in prison for the murders of his family. Michael got 5 life sentences to run consecutively, so both these brothers will never see the light of day outside of a prison. Robert did say, quote, "There was lots of blood. I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking," unquote. He also said that though him and his brother acted together, that they were killing for different reasons. In mid-February 2017, Broken Arrow's City Council announced plans to raise money through the Tulsa Community Foundation for the rights of the property that the Bever family was living on. They even contacted the mortgage company to finish paying off the home that the family was in. They wanted to make this home a memorial park, a garden of some sort. They even titled it the Bever Family First Responders Memorial Park. If you ask me, it was going to probably become some kind of cult classic like the Amityville Horror that still stands, that once in a while people go gather around and just look at because what happened decades before. I'm pretty sure this house was going to be just like that, if not worse. The house was mysteriously destroyed March 18th, 2017. It went up in flames. So these two young men felt that they were in a prison by their vicious, cruel father and their mother who didn't do anything to help the situation. They felt like they couldn't do anything, go anywhere, see anybody, and they hated how their life was. Now these two brothers are in prison. They can't go anywhere, see anyone. One prison to another. The Bever